Okay. Hey, Dwight, how are you?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, Doug. I'm very well, thanks.
Thanks for coming on the show. It's nice to have you here. I think this is Hollywood Week of some sort because I just had Arnie Leibovitz on. I don't know if you know him or not, but he was executive producer for the Time Machine, the new one, or the newer
Okay.
one. And he did he's doing all the Puppetoon restorations, the George Pal stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I don't know if you know him. Hollywood's a very
I
small,
know who George Pal is.
yeah. He was friends with George Pal for many years, and he did a documentary in the 80s about George Pal's life. And so, very interesting conversation with Arnie, anyway.
Good.
So, you're also a director, movie director. You directed Halloween 4, is that correct?
Yeah, I seem to get a lot of kudos for that. It was, kind of a mixed reaction when it came out, and now it's beloved. So you just have to let these things age a little bit.
Okay, I don't remember. How many Halloweens are there in the
Well,
franchise?
there's a whole bunch of series. Like the first grouping sort of ends with Halloween 3. That's sort of the John Carpenter period. And then 10 years later, there was a reboot starting with mine, Halloween 4 The Return. And that went all the way up through, I think, the Jamie Lee Curtis one. Then it ended, and so that was two of series. And then there was a Rob Zombie did two of them, which went off in a completely other direction, although it did have Michael Myers in it, so that was the continuity. Then that ended. And then just recently, Blumhouse Universal and David Gordon Green, I believe his name is, they did three more. And now I think that's wound down. So I think it's, what is it, maybe 12 movies over four cycles. I think it's the right answer.
And you also directed Phantom of the Opera.
With Robert Englund, yes, I did. Well, it was Freddy in the Phantom, or Freddy does the Phantom. I don't know. There was a strange marketing hook with that, but it was a fantastic experience. We got to shoot in these beautiful stages over in Budapest, and Robert's fantastic in the movie. The funny story was Malcolm Golan, who was a great impresario of Canon Films. I don't know if you remember Canon. At one time, they were making like 50 movies a year. Anyway, he read in the newspaper in London that the Gaston Leroux estate had come into public domain. So he thought, okay, well, I can make the Phantom of the Opera for free. And it was still on Broadway. The Lloyd Webber version was still on Broadway. So I think he figured here's a good opportunity to get what they call IP, branded content for free. So that kind of that kind of drove the desire to make that version of the movie.
I do remember Canon. Didn't they do all the Death Wish Charles Bronson movies?
They had like five staple actors. They had Norris, they had Bronson, they had oh gosh, I'm going to forget, but a bunch of '80s action stars. Van Damme, they had him,
Okay.
and I think even Michael Dudikoff. And they would Stallone. They did, and then they were just knocking out these what they call these canned pre-sale movies, and it just was a wildly successful operation for a while. And then it kind of collapsed under its own weight. But they had offices in London and Los Angeles, and they just made a ton of movies. But Menachem was a film buff. He also made art films. He did Maria's Lovers, Andrei Konchalovsky, and he did Runaway Train. He did one with Norman Mailer, one with John Cassavetes. So he would do all these exploitation pictures, and then he would dabble in art films. He even made a movie with Godard. So he was a very interesting man. He was an Israeli, and so was his cousin, Yoram Globus. So they ran this Canon Pictures for years.
I suspect that one side of that was to satisfy the finance, and the other one was to satisfy the creative soul.
Yeah, that's generally how it's done. It's the old one for them, one for me school of filmmaking.
Yeah,
And, Bruce Willis sort of stepped into that. I'll make another Die Hard for you, but you got to let me do Pulp Fiction. It's that kind of thing.
right, exactly. So you've got a book out now called Still Rolling, Inside the Hollywood Dream Factory. I see
I
it
do.
stacked up behind you there. This is a memoir?
It's a memoir slash how to slash warning. No, that's not fair. It's not really a memoir. It's kind of a how-to, and I wrote it. I was giving a guest lecture at UCLA, and there were all these really young, eager, interested people in the audience, and I just realized, because they just kept question after question after question. I thought maybe I should write all this down, and so that's what I saw. I started writing down some of this information. And I've broken it up into two parts. The first part is called just simply film, and that covers my 15 years from indie B movies, working my way up to pretty mainstream studio movies. And then part two is simply called television, which is about my 20 years in network television. And then I'm able to explain how the job is different one from the other.
When you say how to, are you talking about how to break into the business?
Well, there's a little bit of that, but I mean, how to handle actors, and particularly how to handle movie and TV stars. There's some about how to block and light a scene, how to schedule your day, how to handle post-production. There's a lot about agents and managers and studio executives and advertising and marketing and testing and previews and loyalties and crewing up and crewing down. And, it's kind of a survival guide for how you can, because there's no job as director. You don't send in your resume and have someone call you. It's just a series, what I call the interruptions in unemployment. It's a very freelance life. And I try to explain how you're always on the hustle in order to make a career of this.
Well, a lot of directors came from being actors.
Even more now, I feel like it goes through periods. When I was coming up, there was a period where Michael Bay and David Fincher kind of popped. And then all of a sudden it was like, get me music video guys. And they were the thing of the moment. And then the film school guy will break through, and then it's get me the film school guy. It's like whoever had a hit last. I remember it was actors. Sometimes a theater director will have a hit, and then it's like, oh, find me the hottest theater director. So, Hollywood follows the heat wherever it leads them. And now, the whole Michael Bay style of music video directing. I mean, Ridley Scott was an advertising man. So was Tony before their tremendous film careers. But, that just doesn't exist now. There's no, those guys, the music video thing as a film format kind of died.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that particular style. I mean, I understand a music video. But
well, yeah, I mean, it's backlit, it's slow-mo, it's very stylized.
Okay.
It's you remember the MTV world.
Sure, yeah.
So it goes in stages, I guess is what I'm saying. Right now, the king of the hill are writers. Writers, because TV has overwhelmed the business, and so now it's Ryan Murphy and Shonda Rhimes and I'll try and think of some other, but the really important showrunners are kind of the most in demand. The Aaron Sorkin, top of the line writers, those guys really, and gals, that's kind of where the heat is at the moment.
Well, I saw that the strike was over as of last night.
Right.
Do you think it was productive? I mean, do you think the writers got a fair shake with? I didn't see the details.
Well, my opinions are fairly politically incorrect, so I'll be cautious. But I will say this: the directors made a deal in about a week. The directors are always, and of course, I'm a longtime Directors Guild member. They're very organized. I think it was a weird. I will say this: it was unfortunate timing because uh, David Zaslav and Warner's, those people were already contracting, firing people, reshaking up a lot of their employment. And so the writers started asking for a lot right when the subscriber base was shrinking. As you know, the networks just aren't pulling viewers, not anything like they used to. So I think that's why it went on so long. The timing was awkward. I'm afraid the same thing's happening in the auto business. I mean, they're asking for a 40% raise when they're all shifting over to electric vehicles, which are going to be made somewhere else. So I don't know. I hope they feel like it's a fair deal. Everybody wants to get back to work. I don't know whether they'll ever make up what was lost in the 6 months of, no work for anybody, but I guess time will tell.
Well, the whole landscape has just been radically changed, and I'm old enough to remember when there was 3 channels on TV.
Oh, of course. Don't
Sure.
forget PBS.
And PBS,
Yeah,
there was 4. If you got the circular antenna out, you could get UHF.
yeah, get the
Uh,
snowy UHF channel.
yeah.
Um,
And
I
now there's, what, 20 million plus channels on YouTube alone?
Well, there's that, but it's also Netflix. And I don't mind going out on a limb about this. Netflix was a wrecking ball. I mean, it just came in, and once Kevin Spacey did House of Cards and dropped 13 or whatever it was all at one time, and people binge watched it. There wasn't even an expression called binge watching yet. And then the subscribers blew up, and it just they took movies, they made it, just changed everything because there's no box office, there's no Nielsen ratings, nobody knows. And this is part of the frustration of the writers. Nobody knows who's watching. I mean, they can put out press releases, this is the most watched show, blah blah blah. But I would remember working on a show called Millennium, Chris Carter's show, and we got canceled on Friday nights with 7 million viewers, which people would think is a massive hit now. But we would know on Monday. We would know what the 18 to 49 was. We would know what the overalls were. We would know on Monday like who watched the show, and that metric is just nobody knows really.
Yeah,
That's the weird thing.
the only thing you've got to go on perhaps is view hits. But even
But what does
that's,
that mean? If you watch 5 minutes of a show, does that mean you watched it? See, that's weird to me.
well, yeah, I mean, this is for our channel on YouTube. You can tell the analytics about how long people watch. Very few people watch to the end. I think
Right.
people
They
just,
sample it,
yeah,
right?
their attention spans have gotten so short because you've got 20 million channels to get through.
Sure, sure.
So I don't know, but it's a new territory. But I do feel like content creators are not getting the ad revenue that we probably should. I mean, I saw a great post by Peter Frampton. You remember who he is?
The musician.
The musician, right? He posted on his Twitter. He said his song "Baby I Love Your Way."
Huge hit.
Huge hit. 55 million streams on Spotify. And he got a check for $1,700.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Okay.
That's all true. That's all true. But here's the other side of that. Now, since they broke, I say it's the goose that laid the golden egg, because now that it was broken for 6 months, the big conglomerates, don't forget, this is not Lou Wasserman and Universal. This is Netflix and Amazon. You're negotiating with a different animal. This is not the old moguls of the back in the day. And they're now learning to acquire all this content from overseas that's being watched. Korean shows, British shows, Australian shows, it goes on and on. and they're being shot in English and they're being released here and people are watching. And so I think people are underestimating that they don't have to just get American programming now. They can go all over the world, and that's not going to help the writers here or the actors here or the directors here. So it is a sea change. It is going to become a global thing, and that's not good for the guilds, in my opinion. And I think, variety shows, talk shows, music competitions, they're getting as much ratings with those as they do with an episode of, FBI, whatever. So I'm just concerned that the thing may be upended now.
Okay. We got to wind this down on that note. The book.
Oh, no. Let me be more positive. Let me say something more positive. I have a son in film school, and I tell him all the time, listen, this is all going to change. It always does change, but they will need content. So I'm going to tell your audience the same thing, that, like in music, they will need content. However, we figure out how to get it to them. Talented content will survive. I do believe that for sure.
Dwight, we got to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on. The book is called Still Rolling: Inside the Hollywood Dream Factory. My guest is Dwight Little. Last question, do you have a website you want to give out?
I do, and thank you for asking. It's dwightlittledirector.com, and it's got the book, it's got clips of my movies, it's got lots of good, if you're interested, it's got lots of good stuff.
Okay. Thanks for coming on. This was a nice chat, and best of luck with the book and everything you're doing.
Thanks, Doug.